Elon Musk tweeted out that they were no longer taking payments to, pay for their Tesla sales, and they cited reasons that Bitcoin was, very, very fossil fuel heavy in its network, and so in that view, there was someone who was relatively respected amongst technology actually validating a lot of one of these FUD points that the mainstream media have been throwing at Bitcoin, which I don't think is actually valid, but nevertheless, it sent a shockwave of fear through the market. The price started plummeting within seconds to minutes of that tweet. And the market setup at that point was already quite soft. It was making a light recovery. It was tentative, and it was starting to move upwards. And that's also from a fundamental lens when you look at what was happening on the investment activity on the blockchain. And then when that tweet came out, it instigated severe amounts of selling, not only on derivative markets and spot markets. We actually saw like significant sell-off as coins started to flow into exchanges. So real coins got moved, and they were moving from wallets that were quite young. The coins held between 1 to 6 months of age, so relatively new comers to Bitcoin is what I can tell. And I think a lot of them saw a lot of really nice rises in Bitcoin from the 20,000 up to the 60, in the 50 to 60 range, and they probably took the opportunity to take profit. And so we saw this huge I just call it tidal waves of coins moving into the exchanges, and ultimately the whole derivatives market started to unwind. Anyone who was long got liquidated, so that added further selling pressure, and so just we had this cascade of complete unwinding and sell-off, and what I think it went down to 30 or 29,000 in the final, when the final dust had cleared, and it bounced up, and then it was recovering. And then China announced that they were banning Bitcoin miners and reiterated their stance on no trading for their nationals. So, and that's a big thing because miners are heavily located in China. So that sent another wave of fear, and price sold down. So we're now in this situation where Bitcoin's heavily discounted below fundamentals, and the market's, attempting a recovery. It's going sideways upish now.
Raphael, what do you think?
Yeah, I second most of what Willy said. I think there is, from my perspective, two major driving forces here. I think I don't remember when's the last time when I saw the market react so much to news, to actual FUD, or to tweets. I think this was I saw this much more happening in 2017. So with Elon Musk, with the news from China, mines shutting down, China banning mining and so on and so forth. On the one hand, that and what we saw on chain is that most of those reactions were, to like more new market entrants, right? Very short-term holders that sold, at losses, or actually, panic sold eventually. And the second thing I think is that the market was just highly over leveraged, right? And I think that what Willy mentioned, this cascade of margin calls and liquidations, investors aiming to buy the dip when in fact the sell-off wasn't over yet, and so sort of like cascaded down, and we saw that huge drop of over 50% down to 29K. So that combination I think is what really made all this price action happen.
I totally get that the market is not rational. And yet, for the Tesla news, I mean, it's not like a huge percentage of Bitcoin transactions were being used to buy Teslas, and Tesla kept all the Bitcoin on its balance sheet, other than what it had sold previously to test the liquidity in the market, which I think was just them trying to like do fancy accounting tricks. But anyway, so in that sense, it's sort of the reaction to sell based on the news doesn't make sense. And is it just that that's what it is? These are newbies, and what they're doing doesn't make sense. Is that why that tweet had such an effect?
Yeah, I think it's very much that case. It's like we've got some new entrants. They've only been holding for less than 6 months. And then you've enjoyed a lot of price gains. And then something comes along and it validates, so-called Mr., the Iron Man guy that has space rockets and Tesla cars says, no, this is solid. It's like, this is like, it's a big, going to be a big contributor to the world carbon emissions. So, it's just the guy saying it is very well respected. And for sure, like that will, I think, well, it obviously did change the views of people that came in recently saying, oh, maybe this is something that's not going to work in the long run. And they emptied their bags and sold off.
Yeah, I think the simple reach of of a personality like Elon Musk is something that we hadn't seen before, right? And I can very well imagine that it wasn't just the inability of many investors to see the nuances of those messages, such as, hey, we're not accepting these anymore because of X and Y reasons, but actually we haven't sold and we don't plan to sell any of those. And other investors that I bet we're betting probably on an irrational market reacting to this and saw the opportunity and started selling there.
Well, so here's one area where I actually disagree with you, Willy. Where you said you don't think the environmental issue is such a problem for Bitcoin, or not even just Bitcoin, but proof of work chains in general. Granted, I used to cover the environment as a reporter, so maybe I'm kind of tuned into that segment of the world a little bit more than the average person, and perhaps in that regard give them more weight than they have. But I feel like their concern is only just growing because, obviously the more time we let lapse without doing anything about it, the worse the problem will be and the harder it will be to fix. So in that regard, I actually feel like that could be quite a concern for Bitcoin going forward, but you seem to really not think it is merited.
Yeah, my training is a mechanical engineer. We studied renewables, and the thing is, the cost economics of renewables is still in its rollout stage, and it's very marginal. And so, what Bitcoin does is it makes something that's marginal cost competitive. And so, in some regards, you might see an old coal-powered station that's going to be shut down, but along comes a Bitcoin miner says we can mop up that energy and make it hang on for longer. But there's so many places in the world where renewable energies is deploying, and a mining setup can make that marginal deployment come about much sooner as the cost of renewables start to drop. And we're on this arc where renewables are becoming cheaper and cheaper. So eventually this whole infrastructure of energy that the planet's on will eventually move to renewables. Like the age of fossil fuels is coming to an end. And so what I see is that like you've got this tool here that's making things that are marginal, mainly renewables, and it's going to accelerate that. So that's the argument. And people see these smokestacks and go, "Oh, that's bad," but they don't see this increase in acceleration of renewables that's facilitated by these new economics. And not to mention that the efficiency of the Bitcoin network gets better as it gets bigger per capita.
Yeah. And now that China is cracking down on mining, we could see the switch to renewables for mining Bitcoin accelerate. And so that obviously would also be good. And I think what you're referencing too, when you talk about renewable energy generation and combining it with Bitcoin mining, that is, are you referring to the ARC Square paper that they put out, talking about how the economics of that could make, renewables stronger?
I haven't actually read their work. I think they talk about it as maybe like in the home or something, but I'm not sure. This is just from first principles thinking as an engineer, and seeing I used to be a renewables geek too, so I did a lot of the calculations.